I love books, and I have a lot of them. I'm about to move into a new room where I'll have even more book storage, and I feel like with that in mind, my book collection's kind of ballooned a little bit over the past couple months. I do like being a person with a larger book collection because I love books as objects as well as to read them, but I only want to keep books if they meet one of three conditions. Number one, I've read it and I liked it enough that I'll probably want to read it again. Number two, I've read it and I liked it enough that I'll probably want to lend it to a friend eventually. Number three, I haven't read it yet, but I want to. So that's mostly to say that all of the books that I've read, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was fine, I don't really feel like I have a reason to keep them. I want my bookshelf to be something that I look at and I feel excited. I feel excited about the lives that I've already lived through it and about the lives that I anticipate living through it. So let's just get started and I'll pull out the books that I want to declutter. Like, this huge stack of books is a pretty recent development, and all of these are pretty recently acquired. So I do think all of these are safe, but there's more behind it. Whoops. So over the summer, when I wasn't posting a lot of videos, it was because I was doing a lot of reading and I was trying to get through a lot of the books that I've had sitting on my bookshelf for years, a lot of which I thrifted that I hadn't read yet. The Five People You Meet in Heaven, I loved it. I loved it. Jane Eyre, I didn't love. I know this book is so beloved to so many people, it just didn't do it for me. I could see how the concept of like this low-born girl surrounded by higher society is attractive to some people, but it's just not my jam. So I'm gonna declutter this. I actually am going to see if my grandma wants this copy because we were talking about this and she has fond memories. And she was a young woman when this came out, just kidding. There's also going to be some instances where I have two copies of books for whatever reason. One of those is Ready Player One. I actually want to keep this because I'm trying to get my boyfriend more into reading, and I feel like he would like this. I read it years ago, and I did like it, but I didn't love it. Like, I don't know if it would fit my criteria for keeping if I wasn't keeping it to specifically lend to him. But this is the copy that I've read, and this is the copy that my brother was getting rid of, which is so interesting how it just being a little bit taller makes it so much thinner, so I want to keep the thinner copy and declutter the thicker one. I'm going to declutter The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I read this over the summer, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it enough. And I want to declutter this book, Veganist. I got this as a gift years ago. I've been a vegan forever. I've been a vegan for 18 years, and I got this in my early years of being vegan. I never fully read it. I read it a little bit, but I was looking through it recently, and I feel like it's more of a helpful book if you're deciding about whether or not you want to go vegan. It's not as helpful for me as someone who's been vegan for so long. All the Right Places, I'm excited to declutter this. This is a book I was reading, and as I was reading it, I was like, I'm so done with like young adult fiction. All right, it's just like edgy kids that like are interested in death because they're like so cool and interesting. I don't know. It was fine. I read it pretty quickly, but mostly just because I wanted to be done with it. And then this book, There's Something About Ari. It's a very small book. I had purchased it because my favorite band, the Front Bottoms, had shouted it out on a live stream during COVID. And I've later put together that the author is a big fan of them, and they do like mention the band at a point in the book. It was fine, but it was very short, and it really felt like the first third of a book. So yeah, I'm gonna declutter this. I'm noticing also I have two copies of The Grapes of Wrath. I can be pretty particular with what copies of books that I want, and I had ordered this clearly from thrift books, and I just didn't love the edition, so I kept looking on eBay to find one that I liked better, and I really like this one, especially the spine, but I like the front of it too. And this one just doesn't do it for me. I'm not really worrying about the order of these as I put them back because they're going to get moved to their new home very soon. As I've been more interested in like finding the right editions. I've been more annoyed with like the thrift book stickers on the sides of the book, which sometimes don't come off. This one I was trying to take it off and it was ripping, which is why I have another copy of it, so I'm going to declutter this copy of The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill. She wrote Lullabies for Little Criminals, which I read when I was 14 for the first time, and I loved it. It's one of my favorite books, so I've been very excited to read something else from her. Please don't mind all my random crap and vitamins that I have up here. I have not yet read these ACOTAR books, but I plan on it. The first one I see that I can declutter is The Fault in Our Stars. I read this like 10 years ago, and it was fine. I liked it. I cried, but I'm not going to read it again. And actually, if we want to talk about John Green for young adult fiction, I read Looking for Alaska. This one here. Sorry for the lack of focus. I read that earlier this year, and I was actually surprised by how, like, unique and moving it was. Move my kangaroo. I'm trying to sort my nail polishes. Oh, Q&A I can also declutter. This is the book that Slumdog Millionaire was based off of, which I have not watched still, but I did read the book, and it's a good book, but I won't be reading it again. And then next, I'm seeing Slow Dance from Rainbow Rowell. This is a more recent book, and another instance of it was fine, but not that memorable, and I won't be reading it again. Ooh, The Silver Linings Playbook. I read this earlier this year also. I read it thinking that I had watched the movie, and then after I read this in literally a day, because I just wanted to, hurry up with it. I watched the trailer for the movie afterwards, and I was like, I definitely didn't watch the movie. And I feel like it's too football-y for me to want to watch anyway. It was clearly a quick read, and maybe someone else will be excited about it. The Alchemist. Am I going to lose some of you guys here? I know this book is so beloved, and I read it this summer also, in a day also, and I just didn't love it. I think it's great if people can, derive meaning from it and it moves them, but for me, it just felt like a story that was kind of trying to be deeper than it was, and I didn't even, love it for the journey of it, The Marriage Plot from Jeffrey Eugenides. I've been kind of going back and forth in my head about this because I love Jeffrey Eugenides. I love Middlesex and I love Virgin Suicides. Those are two of my favorite books. This book I didn't love. And I'm like, part of me feels like I could keep it because I love Jeffrey Eugenides. So I have a complete collection. But also, what's the point of that? Because I don't think I'm going to be going back and reading it. And if I were to decide in the future that I wanted to read it, I could take it out of the library, or I could look for it in a thrift store, or I could order it on eBay for a couple bucks. It's not like me getting rid of this means I can never read it again. It's just me acknowledging that I'm probably never going to read it again, and I don't need to, be reminded of it. So yeah, I think I did talk myself into decluttering it. Tina Fey Bossy Pants. I read this in, 2013, and I think it was amusing enough, but I won't be rereading it. Just to skip ahead a little bit, I feel the same way about Mindy Kaling's book. I read it right around the same time as that. Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me? I remember thinking it was fine. I'm sure I enjoyed it. I'm sure I chuckled, but won't be reading it again. Monster. Move my plant-based honey out of the way. Monster I read over the summer. I remember this being on reading lists when I was in school, and it was an interesting story. It was about a young man that was arrested, and it was was he in the wrong place, wrong time? Was he involved in a crime? It was all written as a play, but it did feel a little bit young for me. I read it once. I'm gonna declutter it. Fear and Loathing. It's funny because this is similar to the Jeffrey Eugenides book, The Marriage Plot. I didn't enjoy it, but I kind of want to reread it because part of me feels why didn't I enjoy it the way that everyone else did? And the cover of the copy I have is so cool. So that can survive for right now. Life of Pi. I read this many years ago. This is another book that I read, and I still haven't watched the movie. I need to do that eventually, but yeah, I'm not going to reread the book. I can let this one go. We still have several more shelves to look at, but I feel so good that this isn't spilling over anymore here. And there's so much more extra room on this shelf. Not that they're staying on these shelves, because as I said, I'm moving rooms, but it feels nice to know that I just made a difference. Okay, up on this shelf, these are for the most part gonna stay. This is my copy of Stephen King, The Stand, that my brother gave to me. That's literally in 2 pieces. And maybe I'd buy another copy if I saw like the exact same edition, but it's not like that high on my priority list. I also have some books from like my youth up here that I probably will like sit down and, read in an hour sometime. I do think most of this shelf are books that I can keep that either I haven't read yet or I liked. I have my Game of Thrones books down there, my Lord of the Rings books, all of which I've read. I read Fahrenheit 451 earlier this year. I've read Silence of the Lambs and Red Dragon. I think these 2 Gillian Flynn books I can declutter. I think Gone Girl is like a fantastic book. These were good too. I enjoyed them at the time, but I think if I was going to reread a Gillian Flynn book that I've already read, as opposed to reading any other kind of like dark woman's novel that I haven't read yet, I would just reread Gone Girl. So I'm going to declutter these 2. And I guess one other thing on this shelf, I definitely want to keep this German book because it's very nostalgic to me. But I also have a little Spanish handbook that I've also had forever, but I don't see myself referencing this. I feel like if I wanted to look up Spanish words or learn Spanish, I would use the internet. Okay, on this top shelf is a lot of taller books. I have some books that I got from school, like Thank You for Arguing, that I want to revisit sometime. Reckless Disregard is one of my favorite books. Really, 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 really sad. I read it 3 times. Oh, here's one I can declutter. This is We Were Liars. I also read this summer, and this was also part of my okay, I don't need to read young adult books anymore. I feel like sometimes also in the young adult books, it's like things that would have blown my mind more if I was younger. Or if I've read less books, I guess. Which isn't necessarily an insult to it. Like, there's things for everyone. Not everything's going to be for me. And I feel like this specific genre, at least right now, at this point, it just doesn't feel like it's for me right now. I mean, and I guess it's literally not for me because I'm not a young adult. I'm just a regular adult. The Filmmaker's Handbook. This is one that I had kept from school, but I feel like if I was going to be reading one of my old school books, I have 3 up here that I'm interested in. I have Thank You for Arguing, I have Blowing the Roof Off the 21st Century, and I have No Place to Hide. I don't think I'm going to be reading this big-ass Filmmaker's Handbook. I'll probably page through this before I actually do declutter it, but yeah, I can declutter this. I read this book recently and I found it really interesting. I read the Jeanette McCurdy book early this year. I was interested in it, but I don't think I need to keep it. I'm also just less excited about big hardcovers as objects. I think if this was a little cute pink book, I might feel differently about it. But I feel like the moral of the story either way though is that I can't imagine myself reading this again. I feel like, especially with memoirs, they'd have to be really pertinent to my life, maybe, for me to feel like I'm going to read this again, So I can declutter this. Where the Crawdads Sing, I read this a couple years ago, before the movie came out, and I read it kind of slowly just because I felt like it wasn't really for me. There's always some recommendations that I see, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's not going to be for me. And I wonder if Reese's book club is going to be that kind of thing, that kind of a sunset evening where he kissed me type of book, which it just isn't my jam. So yeah, I can declutter this. The Night We Lost Him by Laura Dave. This is a pretty new book. I read it a couple months ago, and yeah, I think this one I would say I didn't like it. I would say farther than it just didn't do it for me. I just didn't think it was that good of a book. Oh, and then this one I'm going to pull out for reference in a moment. Here's a whole other stack of books. And for the most part, these are going to stay, except The Girl on the Train. I actually did buy another copy of this because A, I couldn't take the thrift book sticker off. B, it's a large hardcover. C, I think it's an ex-library book, which I also dislike. But I had read it a couple months ago and I liked it enough that I was I want to keep it. So I found another copy on eBay for $4. That was a paperback and I bought that one instead. I don't know if I said, I don't know exactly where that is at the second, but I know I have it. So I'm going to declutter this hardcover. And then I also have this stack of books. This one that I had pulled out is Naked by David Sedaris. I own two books of his, and I had never read any until this summer. I read this one, and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't like how this copy has like a million stickers on it. So I got another copy on eBay for really cheap, and I can declutter this copy with all the stickers. Let's see how many books I'm decluttering. 28, which I'm actually thrilled with because in the back of my head, I was thinking that I would feel satisfied decluttering 25. So without even like purposely trying and counting along the way, I did that and then some. I think this is something that gets kind of like talked about in decluttering, but sometimes all you need to do is take out like the extra fluff, like the extra stuff that doesn't make your heart sing, and it makes your whole collection look so much stronger. And that's what I'm anticipating I'm going to feel about like my books and my bookshelf. And as someone who already loves her books and her bookshelf, I'm just really excited to look at it without the extra books that make me say like, oh yeah, that was okay, you know? This isn't my usual content, but if you like this, I hope you would give me a thumbs up so that I know. And let me know if there's any other like future related content you would want to see. I'll definitely be showing in some capacity my like updated bookshelf when I'm all moved into my new room. I don't know if it's just going to be kind of like a quick overview in like a room makeover video, or if I'll actually do a video about my bookshelf. I could do that and kind of like talk about my favorite books and like my reading goals or something like that. I don't know. Let me know. Either way, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you very soon. Bye!